So you see, Jason, what we're talking about here is not just a covenant that God made with Abraham for his descendants. The covenant we're talking about is the covenant that will bring redemption to all of humanity.
Okay.
Like he said, I will bless those blessed by you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So, and this covenant, some of the terms of this covenant that God made with Abraham involved the creation of the state of Israel within those borders that we just talked about.
Okay.
So, and this covenant, of course, Abraham had like 8 children. But this covenant was going to go through the branch that goes through Isaac. So and this is what was important to realize. Now, Isaac, we're going to go to our next slides here. So you see Abraham, he had Isaac, and Isaac had 2 children, Jacob and Esau. You see, this is some of the terms of the covenant. So here, and what we have here is that Rebecca had a hard time with her. We can read that in Genesis 25, and she had a hard time with her pregnancy, and she goes to God and she says, if this is thus, why is it worth it? And he says, oh, don't worry, you've got 2 nations in your womb. That's where the Middle East crisis started, in Rebecca's womb.
Wow, the Middle East crisis started in Rebecca's womb.
No wonder she was.
That's a statement.
No wonder
that must have been another definition of labor pain.
Yes, exactly. And actually, in Bible and Jewish text, they call tribulation the troubles, the labor pains of Jacob. Tribulation.
There you
go. But Rebecca, she had a revelation from God. When God told her that 2 nations are in her womb, she was also told that the younger one will be the leader. So maybe they were in there trying to fight who's going to come first, but Rebecca was told. It seems like Isaac was not told, but Rebecca was told the younger one, the one who will be born last of the twins, will be the leader. And so, but at first, Esau came out first, so he was the de facto leader. Nobody asked any question to Rebecca. Firstborn, he was getting the title. But later on, Jacob legally bought that birthright from Esau. See, firstborn was not just a chronological order of birth. Firstborn was a title of family leadership. It would be bestowed to whoever you want. So Jacob bought it, a legal purchase that we have right there in the Bible. That Esau didn't want it, Jacob bought it for a bowl of soup.
We'll pause right there. Okay, Rabbi, help me understand how we got to where we are today with this conflict in Israel and Hamas and everything that's going on. It has like everyone in the world is watching and everyone seems to have an opinion.
Yeah.
How did we get to where we are today?
Well, again, we got to look backward. So this whole area, like we said before, it's a children fighting for the inheritance of Abraham. So what happened there? When Abraham died, he divided his inheritance between his 8 children. He gave his last 6 children the territories he owned in Saudi Arabia. Part of it was Midian. He gave the tribes of Esau and Ishmael the area that is called Jordan today. And of course, the borders were different. But it's basically a rough idea.
Okay.
Then to Isaac, he gave the special land that God calls his land. the land where the temple will eventually be built, the land where the son of Abraham's Messiah that brings redemption to the world will be revealed.
Hmm.
From that time, because it was the land of promise given to the chosen seed of Abraham, the sliver of land no bigger than New Jersey has become the spiritual, economic, as well as political nerve of the world.
Wow.
That little piece of land
Hmm.
doesn't have oil. It's just because this is the chosen one, and we don't like not to be chosen.
No, nobody likes to get picked last or not picked at all.
Yeah, Daddy's favorite. It's going to draw the ire of the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout history, the fate of the world has revolved around countries and people's relationship with Israel, who is also called God's firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
We need to remember when Yeshua went to visit Samaria, went through Samaria on his way to on his way to Galilee or Jerusalem. A lady came to him, and at the end of his discussion, he told her, salvation comes from the Jews. Basically, what he's saying, the Messiah who's going to redeem the world comes from the children of Israel.
Okay.
That's what he was saying. So, and the goal of God, again, with the plan of redemption, included the creation of that country. So we talked about before how the mothers were barren, but when Israel became a country, it was actually in Egypt that all the tribes of Jacob went there, and that's where they grew, they prospered, became a country. And what happened? Eventually,
What happened?
the Pharaoh wanted to get rid of Israel. He felt that he was threatened by Israel's numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to kill them all. So when we look at that from the standpoint that Israel represents the plan of redemption for humanity, we can see what is the spiritual power that moved Pharaoh's hand.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to pick too many daisies here, but that story of Pharaoh, it happens 3 times. There is a story that says how Abraham, his father Terah, there's a whole story about it. His father Terah worked for Nimrod. And Nimrod was very narcissistic. He wanted to make sure nobody would take his place.
Mm-hmm.
So he had many baby boys killed. And Terah found a way to keep his own baby boy, who was Abraham. And some astrologers came to Nimrod and said, there is going to be a boy from Terah who's going to do something. This happened with Pharaoh. Astrologers came to Pharaoh and says, there's going to be a boy who's going to save these people, and he tried to kill all the baby boys. And it happened with who next? With Yeshua.
Sure. Wow. Yep.
You can see the story, the story.
Cool.
So
wow.
Anyway, but from then on, every country, every world empire has tried to get rid of Israel, to get rid of them by killing them or assimilating them. Mostly it's been assimilation.
Sure.
And from Egypt to Rome, we can see that this satanic goal was to prevent the revelation of the Messiah. Because without the Messiah coming from the Jews, from Israel, there is no redemption for humanity. The Messiah had to come from a Jewish maiden in a Jewish country called Israel.
Okay.
So, okay, we can understand that. The devil doesn't like the Messiah. He wants to get rid of Israel before he's there. Okay, but today, things have not changed. And this is where we got to understand. The enemy's goal this time is to prevent what we pray when we pray every week, or some people every day. When we say, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. To prevent Yeshua's return to take over the world and establish his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. The millennium is not going to be up there somewhere on a planet called heaven. Yeah. It's his kingdom on earth. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing, basically, anti-Semitism is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual concept that goes against God's plan. Mm. It's very important to realize that. And if you can ask many people, they will say, I'm not anti-Semitic. But anti-Semitism is like a demon, a dragon, with many heads.
Okay.
And they all look different.
It's like one of those monsters that battles Godzilla.
I guess so.
Many heads.
And each head is different.
Okay.
So there was a time where the monster carries the head of the concept of they killed the Messiah, they committed deicide. Okay. Another time it was, they control the world, they have all the money. Another time is like we see in the story of the book of Esther, Haman comes to the king and says, there's a people here who don't respect you, they don't obey your laws. Another time is in Egypt. There's people that are getting too numerous for you. They're going to take over your country.
Yeah, too many of them.
Too many of them. Every generation has its own thing. Every generation has a different head. But it's all the same thing, anti-Semitism. What is the head today? Today is anti-Israelism. Because there is, in order for the Messiah to return, he has to return in a country called Israel. It's the prophecies. We can't go against the prophecies. No. If we read Ezekiel, if we read Zechariah, if we read Malachi, he returns to Israel in a country, even in an Israel that is at peace. That's in Ezekiel 38. So, if there is no Israel, the prophecy can't happen.
Sure.
So, the whole idea is to prevent that his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. The people who did the most of that are the Romans. So the book of Daniel presents us with very simple imagery of the world major empire.
Okay.
It starts with Egypt, then Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then there will be the seventh one, the last one. Okay. Since Rome, there hasn't been any world empire. There's been partially world, like British, Ottoman, French, but that's it. So, but Egypt and Assyria and Babylon were all sources of persecution for Israel and the Jewish people. Medo-Persia offered limited freedom as King Darius helped rebuilding the temple, while still keeping control over Israel. Greece and Rome persecuted Israel. But here's what Rome did. With Rome came the actual disappearance of the land of Israel as an actual sovereign nation. With Rome, Israel as the promised land, as a Jewish sovereign nation where, according to the prophets, the final fulfillment of the Messianic age is to take place, ceased to exist. The ancient Romans, they actually renamed the country.
What did they rename it?
So it would be forgotten from history. That's a good question. What did they rename it? In 135 CE, after stamping out the provinces of Judea, the Roman renamed that province Syria Palestina.
Ah.
That's where we get the word Palestine. It means, they called that, and they didn't make it a country. It was a region.
Okay.
Syrian Palestine. And the reason why they gave it that name was very, very strategic.
Yeah, tell me.
Some of the main enemies of Israel during its history were the people that came from Greece that lived in the area of Gaza, called the Philistines.
Oh,
Now, the Philistines were Greek, they were not Semitic.
okay.
So they were not Semitic, they were not Arabs, they
Sure.
were Greeks. And so it was like a little bit like Rome thumbing its nose at Israel. Yeah, we're going to take away your country and we're going to rename it after the name of your arch enemy, the Philistine. Ha ha.
That's dirty.
That's dirty.
That's
Yeah.
dirty.
That's what this is where we get that name. And Palestine since then has never, ever, ever been a country. It's been a region, like we say, the Midwest.
Okay.
It never has been a country with a president, a constitution, a money, culture. Never, 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 never. It always belonged to the person who owned the area.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Rome, then it was the Ottoman, the Arabs, then it was the Crusaders, then it was the Arabs again, then it was the British, and it eventually went to Israel in 1948. The decision was made in 1947, but it was legal in 1948. So
very cool.
So this is and the reason why this concept, this idea, this history is important is because it gives a different view on the accusation that Israel stole that country. They got it legally through the UN. It was a UN decision. And even before that, through the British. But there was no country to steal. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire was dismantled.
Okay.
It was dismantled, and the French and the British came there and divided everything and created all these Middle East countries that we know today. Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, all that stuff. It was created right there. And there's history on how people of Israel inherited that part again.
Wow. That's cool. Okay, so Rabbi Gabriel, explain to me this covenant between God and Abraham, and give me an example, like a real life example of what that covenant would look like for those of us that are trying to understand. It was a big deal.
It's important to understand that. A covenant is like a contract on steroids. A contract would be between you and me, and that's it.
Okay.
A covenant is intergenerational. Like, for example, intergenerational wealth.
Okay.
Like, for example, I don't know if it's the same in America, but in France and many countries of Europe, it's not allowed to disinherit your children. So your house, your land, your estate goes to your children. It's automatic.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the same here. So, and this covenant that was made was actually an estate that was given to to Abraham. So here we have this promise that God made. Okay. I really like this because when God told Abraham, I'm going to bless you and I'm going to give you this land, and to you and your descendant. And Abraham said, well, thank you. And then he said, how do I know I'm going to get it?
Put it in writing, he was saying.
Show me the money. Yeah. I want a paper. I want to pay. He was very pragmatic. He believed in God, but he wants the signature on the dotted line.
Sure.
And that was that whole thing with the animals got into, that it was God making a covenant with Abraham. But then he went even further. There are three places in the Bible that stand as bill of sales of what we can consider a covenant of intergenerational wealth, real
Okay.
estate. So the first one is found in Genesis 23.
Okay.
Sarah, Abraham's wife, dies. Let's see if I have a slide for it. Yeah, bill of sale. Sarah is Abraham's wife, and she's dying. She passed away, and Abraham wants to bury her. So, and he's still a stranger, like the book of Hebrews says, in the land of promise. It's given to him by God, but not on paper on earth. So he's got it's a bit like King David. He was made king by Samuel, but he had to fight his entrance into the palace.
Okay.
So same thing. God gave it to Abraham, but he was still living as a stranger in the land of promise.
Interesting.
So he wanted a place to bury his wife. So he went to a Hittite king, and he said, "I want to buy a place. I want a place to bury my wife." And the Hittite king said, "Oh, take whatever you want. We'll give it to you. We're friends. We're together. It's a gift." And Abraham said, "No." It's almost like he knew that land would be contested later.
Oh, really? Almost.
So he said, "I want to pay for it." And then the sons of Heth, as they're called, they said, "Okay." And they gave him an exorbitant price, like it's very expensive. They were playing with him. But it's Abraham who got the last laugh, because he said, "Okay." And he bought it. He bought that piece of land to bury his wife. And that piece of land now is in a town called Hebron. And when you visit, when we go to Israel together,
Yes.
we will probably try to go to Hebron. And this is the tomb of the patriarchs. You have Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Leah, and people go there to visit. But it's very difficult for Israelis to go visit there, because this land is very contested,
Really?
that it doesn't belong to them. When actually, the Bible, if you believe in the Bible, that the Bible is true, the Bible stands as a bill of sale, that it was sold to Abraham. He bought it.
Interesting.
So
Doesn't seem fair.
No, here it is. He bought it. So the cave of Machpelah, it's called, and it's in the city of Hebron today. So then the next one that we find is in Genesis 33. In Genesis 33, Jacob is finally feeling like he's settling down. He's in a city called Shechem. It's in Samaria. And everything's going fine. And they're outside the city, and they have flocks. And we are told that he bought for 100 pieces of silver the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent. So he put an altar there and everything. So again, we have this area that Jacob bought. And even in the time of Yeshua, in the times of Yeshua, Yeshua visited there at the well of Jacob, and he met the Samaritan woman.
Oh, sure.
And he said, "Our ancestors, Jacob dug this well."
Right.
So we know it's Jacob's, and you can see that well if you can get to that area, But so again, this is another place, another area of land that Jacob bought. But behold, again, like Hebron, is one of the most disputed area in Israel, where people say it doesn't belong to Israel. But the man called Israel bought it. You know? So that's the second one.
Okay.
There is a third bill of sale. A third bill of sale. This one is when King David, he made a big mistake in trying to organize a census. To organize a census was forbidden in the Torah, except if God wants it. There are several censuses given in the Torah, but it's God who's got to do it. But there, David did it of his own initiative, and even his military commander says, "Please, King, don't do that. You know it's wrong." And he said, "I want to do it." Okay, he did it. That brought a plague on the country. Many people died, and you can read the whole story. It's in 2 Samuel 24. And at one point, the angel who's bringing the plague turns his hand towards Jerusalem. And he says, when the angel stretched out his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it, Adonai changed his mind about causing such distress and said to the angel destroying the people, "Enough, withdraw your hand." The angel of Adonai was at the threshing floor of Arona, the Jebusite. Then David spoke to Adonai when he saw the angel striking the people. He said, "Here I have sinned. I have done wrong. But these sheep, what have they done? Please let your hand be against me and against my father's family." Gad the prophet came to David that day and said to him, "Go set up an altar to Adonai on the threshing floor of Aruvna." Basically, David was supposed to buy a certain piece of land, a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
The threshing floor is a big area.
Mm.
And build an altar there and do an offering to the Lord.
Okay.
And that would be pleasing unto the Lord. So David went there, and the man who's was the threshing floor said, "Look, you're my king. I'll you everything. Take it. I'll give it to you. I'll give you all the yokes of my oxen for the wood. I'll give you and the animals to you, my king." And David said, "No." And he said something very, very beautiful. He said, "I will not give unto the Lord of what has cost me nothing."
Mm.
I think this is like Abraham. This is like, it's like, "I will not give unto the Lord of what has cost me nothing. I will buy it from you at a good price," he said. So he bought it. And what is this area? Is this area today that is called the Temple Mount Plaza, where the temple was built.
Okay.
And today, Israelis don't have the right to go there.
Still.
Yeah. It was conquered in 1967 in a 6-day war, but in order to have peace with Jordan, Israel gave the control of it to Jordan.
Okay.
While it's part of Israel, it's controlled by other people. It made a deal. And so again, that's another bill of sale that tells us that the land was legally bought. It's not just God's promise. There is a legal transaction there.
Crazy to me.
And again, that area actually is the most disputed area
Really?
in the world as far as whether it belongs to Israel or not. So in all this, we can see, again, God's program.
Mm-hmm.
But is it a coincidence that the three areas for which the Bible stands as a bill of sale, that they belong to the children of Jacob, Esau still refuses to yield?
It's like he's bitter
that
he sold it for a bowl of soup originally.
Seller's remorse.
Seller's remorse. It's a good one.
Yeah. So that's it for this.
That's good. Okay, so you're just telling me some events that happened in the 20th century. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, that's a lot that happened. Boom, 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 boom. Help me. Yeah. So unpack it some more for me.
Yeah.
Like, help me understand.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. This is the sort of stuff that cradled my teenage years.
I bet.
Stories of Israel and the creation of the state of Israel. I was part of Zionist youth camps when I was in France, and it was like what we talked about all the time, you know. But one thing that happened is, like I said, before World War One, you had the Ottoman Empire who was running that area, including that area called Syria Palestina, who was a region, not a country.
No.
People lived there, Arabs lived there, Jews lived there, but they were under the ruler of, if it was Egypt, Syria, Jordan, whoever ruled, that's
Okay.
so it was the Ottoman Empire. Now, World War One decimated the Ottoman Empire. And the British and the French, like I said, they started dividing the country. But before that, in Hungary, there was a man whose name was Theodor Herzl. He was born from a Jewish family, and he was a journalist.
Okay.
And he went to cover, and at that time, Judaism in Europe was very comfortable. They felt anti-Semitism didn't exist anymore.
Oh.
We're all doing well, and it's fine, you know, very assimilated too. But one time, Theodor Herzl went to cover a story about a French captain who was accused of being a spy. His name was Dreyfus.
Dreyfus.
And he was not a spy.
No. What was he?
He was a regular soldier that was falsely accused because he was in somewhere, so circumstantial evidence, but it was not. But his life was destroyed because of it. And when Herzl covered the story, he started seeing people shouting, "Kill the Jew! Kill the Jew! Kill the Jew!" He thought, "Oh my gosh, I thought I'd never hear this again."
Whoa.
You know, to be honest, it's a little bit like many of my friends tell me. They would have never thought that in American universities today, you'd have Jews have problems, anti-Semitic protests in many places, and it's been going on for a while, you know. So, but anyway, so he saw that, and so he created something called the Zionist Congress, where he started making a whole plan. He started proposing the idea that Jews need to return to their ancestral land, you know, and they did papers and they had meetings and everything. It was an idea so far, but it gathered a lot of momentum.
Sure. Okay.
As a movement.
And what happened?
So then, World War One happened, and there was a man who was a physicist, some sort of scientist named Chaim Weizmann, who created some sort of explosives that help win the war.
Oh.
So at the end of the war, the British government came to him and asked him, "We would like to give you a reward."
What did he ask? Did he ask for something?
Yes.
What did he ask
Yes.
for?
He asked for the region of Palestine to be given to the Jewish people.
Oh boy.
That's what he asked for.
Something tells me that didn't happen.
Well, it did.
They did do it.
It did. Actually,
Wow.
he did such a good job of presenting the idea that the Prime Minister of England, Lord Balfour, was moved to tears.
Whoa.
You know,
That's cool.
you know, Theodor Herzl is known for a famous saying that he says, if you will it, it's not a dream. If you will it, it's not a dream.
If you will it, it's not a dream.
Yeah. And I don't know if Balfour knew of that quote, but what he answered Chaim Weizmann is, "It is a dream, a beautiful dream, and I understand it."
Wow.
You know, British people were not into the Bible, so they could see a whole thing going on. And and so basically he sent Allenby to to conquer General Allenby. And there's a beautiful story about that. They took Jerusalem without a shot
Without a shot.
because because there were British airplanes. It was some of the first airplanes. You know?
Okay, yeah.
And there was a prophecy. I don't know exactly, a prophecy that says that sort of messianic prophecy of someone would come take the city of Jerusalem, something on the wings of a bird.
Mm.
You know, I forget all the details, but the name Alembi, if you say it with an Arabic accent, it means prophet of God.
Oh.
Yeah, so basically there was a lot of superstition going on. So the fight was very easy. And Allenby is known that he came with his armies through the Jaffa gates. But when he arrived there, he dismounted his horse and he said, "I'm not coming here as a conqueror. I come here as a pilgrim."
Oh, wow.
You know, so and people can read the Balfour Declaration giving that piece of land, that area to the people of Israel. So so there is the text of the Balfour Declaration, and from then
Another
on,
question about, like, people say that some people say that what's happening to Israel and even just a lot of the Jews, they have it coming. They deserve it because they rejected God. They rejected Jesus. They killed Jesus. And it's as if it's like a punishment from God, right? That the king of the Jews was killed at the hands of Jews. And so explain that to me. Those who believe this is punishment and that it'll be forever for generations, is that true? I mean, explain that for me. Help me understand.
yeah, that happened to me at the school where I teach, where I was told that the 13-year-old boy, when his class was talking about what's going on right now, the 13-year-old boy said, "Well, they deserve it."
They deserve it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you hear that even on the news.
yeah. What does that 13-year-old boy know but what he hears either at home
Right.
or church?
Oh, boy.
You know, so it's pretty distressing. I like to say some people blame the Holocaust on that too. This is a punishment from God. Go tell that to a 12-year-old boy who's going to the gas chamber, who sees his parents shot before his eyes because they're Jews. Explain to him, it's because what your people did 2,000 years ago, and God is just. And that doesn't fly very well.
No.
The punishment of Israel Israel was punished for that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And even Yeshua said it. The punishment was exile.
Mm. Exile.
Exile. That was it. They were told, it's all through Deuteronomy. If you disobey, if you sin, you lose the land.
Mm.
Now, if I have a son who misbehaves at home, and let's say he's over 18, I say, look, you go find yourself some other place to live, you're kicked out. It's fine. He's my son.
That's a common response.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean the neighbors can come and beat him up.
Ah.
He's exiled from my house, but the neighbors, what do they have to do with him?
Yeah, if you saw that happening, you would intervene.
I would defend him, yeah.
Say, no. That's not okay.
Israel is God's son, firstborn, been a bad boy, disobeyed, got kicked out of the house. But what do the nations of the world, such as Europe, have to do with punishing Israel for Israel's sin with his father?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So this is the thing that's important to realize. So, but also people say, Jews reject Jesus. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. In Numbers and Deuteronomy, there is written that if a prophet comes to Israel and does wonders, miracles, while suggesting to worship idols or disobey Torah, this man should be put to death as a false prophet.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that the first generation of Sadducees who had Yeshua executed, it was a political stunt of religious jealousy, and it was really bad. It was bad. But after 200 years, let's say,
Mhm.
the whole concept of that history changed. And the idea of Yeshua became a Greco Roman philosopher with Greco Roman ideas,
Mm.
clothing,
Really?
who also preached against obedience to the Torah and to the law of Moses, who told Jews, now if you are a believer in Yeshua, you don't have to observe the Sabbath, you don't have to circumcise your boy, you don't have to eat kosher, and you certainly don't have to study the Old Testament because it's irrelevant now.
Oh boy.
So today, like for me, I'm Jewish. I'm a believer that Jesus is the Messiah.
Mhm.
But if I go to a church, I'm told the same things,
Hmm.
because today, since a long time ago, Jewish people have been presented with a Messiah who tells them to do everything that a false prophet does.
Really?
And according to them, that man is worthy of death.
Mm.
So basically, there is a misrepresentation
Okay.
of who the Messiah is that makes problems. So to me, Yeshua never told people to not observe Torah. He was himself an observant Jew. It says he went to the synagogue. Customary, he went to the synagogue every Saturday.
Mhm.
He celebrated the Passover. He was during the Feast of Tabernacle. He was in Jerusalem. He was even in Jerusalem during the Feast of Hanukkah.
Mm.
We read that in John 10. He went to all the pilgrimage festivals. We read he only made his way to Jerusalem. He was going to a pilgrimage festival.
Mm.
He was eating kosher, and so it's very difficult. So when today Jews are presented with a Messiah who tells them to disobey what they know is the word of God,
Yeah.
by rejecting that sort of Messiah, they actually take a stand for the word of God. And I would like to end by saying, there are many people who know the name Yeshua, Jesus, the
yeah.
history, the New Testament, but they have no idea of who he is. It's really like me saying, "Oh yes, I know Jason is this Chinese guy. He eats rice every day,"
Right.
but that's not you.
No.
So basically, they're given the straw man, Yeshua. So what I want to say is that whereas many people know the man,
Mm-hmm.
but Jews, they know the culture of the man, the heart of the Messiah, and what he's supposed to look
It's a
like.
big difference.
So does that make sense?
Yeah.
To know the person, or to know the person, to know about the heart
Yeah.
of the
To
person.
know their name,
Yeah.
but to actually know them personally.
Yes. Jews know what the Messiah is supposed to look like, and it's not like the person they're being given.
Mm.
And in the beginning, when we read the stories in the Gospels and the Acts, only really the leadership refused him. It says the leadership didn't like him, but the common people received him gladly.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know that, but after the resurrection, the Messianic movement exploded.
Mm.
That's why it created persecution in Acts 13.
Oh, sure.
It totally exploded. I mean, look, not even 3 months after the crucifixion and resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
the disciples stand at the temple, and they're taken to jail. And it is said that the very priests who had Yeshua executed, they were afraid to flog the disciples because they were afraid of the people.
Oh man.
That shows that there was a
They were
big
ticked.
influence.
Yeah, they were not happy.
Yes, and James, when Paul came back from Greece, James tells him, "Look at Jerusalem. It's full of believers, and they're all zealous for the Torah, zealous for God, for the Torah. The movement exploded, so it was like
A wildfire.
yeah.
You just mentioned that Esau and Jacob are still fighting to this day, and it's generations later. Explain, help me understand that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you caught that. That I wanted to bring something, and you just did it.
Okay. Yeah. So,
so
help me understand.
So there is a principle in Jewish teachings that says that the deeds of the fathers are important to the children.
Okay.
So if we want to understand the prophetic books such as Revelation, Ezekiel, Daniel, and the prophecies even written in that Paul gave and Yeshua gave, we've got to look at Genesis.
Okay.
Because Genesis has the blueprint of the history of the world, actually several times. You look at Sodom and Gomorrah, you look at the flood, you look at all these things. Those are blueprints for what we call end time. And as far as Israel is concerned, there is a man in the book of Genesis who is called Jacob. God eventually changes his name to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So this Jacob / Israel has a problem with his brother, and he has to go in exile to some of his distant family in an area called Haran.
Mm-hmm.
And he stays there for 20 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And there he becomes rich. He has a big family.
He prospered.
He prospered very well, yes. Then he has to return.
Why does he have to return?
Because he knows that he is the custodian of the covenant, and he is not to make his life in a foreign country.
Mm.
His life belongs to Israel. He has to go back there. He's responsible for the covenant God made with his grandfather Abraham, with his father Isaac, and with him too.
Mm.
And he had promised God. If you remember, when he went, at first when he was in the desert on his way to Haran. No, it's not Haran. It's I forgot the name. But he had a dream of this ladder, and after that, he said on his way out, on his way away from that place, he says, "If I do come back to this place, if God allows me to come back to this place, I will serve Him, giving my tithe, and He will be my God." So he knew his responsibility to the covenant. He has to come back. He only stayed there to pay for his wives and flock.
Mm.
Then he's supposed to go back. So he's going back, and Esau's waiting for him.
Oh boy.
Esau's waiting for him. So here's how it goes. Israel, 2,000 years ago, give or take a few hundred years, is kicked out of its country. The people of Israel, kicked out of their country.
Okay.
And they go in exile, not for 20 years, but 2,000 years.
Sure.
2,000 years. But the goal of Israel is not to stay in exile. The goal is to come back to Israel. I mean, one might say, why? Well, if for anything, it's what's promised in Deuteronomy 30.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to. So, and somehow history works it out that a man called Adolf Hitler created the situation where he wanted to annihilate the Jews. He actually created the situation that made the Jews want to come back to Israel.
Right.
So this is quite interesting.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So they come back. And when they come back, who is waiting for them? The children of Esau. You see, when Jacob tries to come back to Israel, in the story of Genesis, we read that Esau is waiting for him with 400 armed men.
Mm.
He was not happy. He was going to have a word or two with his brother,
Oh boy.
you know. So, and the same thing happens today. Israel comes back, and Esau is not happy.
Okay.
He's going to have a word or two with his brother.
It
You see
brings
the
a new
situation?
meaning. It brings a new meaning for sibling rivalry.
Yes. This is really, to me, I look at the Middle East problems as a big sibling rivalry of children fighting for daddy Abraham's inheritance still.
Mm.
You
Wow.
know, it's like it's
Sure.
the same story going on.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, but how did Jacob solve the problem? You know, to me, this is where it becomes interesting. This is where it becomes interesting.
Okay.
Because Esau is a descendant of Abraham. And so is Ishmael. So how is the problem solved? Let's look what Jacob did.
Okay.
Jacob could have said, okay, let's gather an army and let's,
Yeah.
Here he is with his wives and children and flocks. And on top of it, he had an encounter with an angel the night before, so he's limping. So and this encounter with this angel, he called it. After he had this encounter, this is when his name changed to Israel, and he said, "I'll call this place Peniel because I have seen the face of God." So, and he asked the man, "Tell me your name," and the angel told him, "Why do you ask me for my name, seeing as it is wonderful?" So here he meets this angel that wounds him, and here he arrives limping in front of his brother. But before that, what did he do? Before that, he had sent to his brother 7 caravans of goods. It's a little bit like the double inheritance that he received.
Yeah.
He's sending it
back.
He's sending, take the sheep, take the camels, take the goats, take the chicken, take everything, take it all.
Here's the kitchen sink.
And the kitchen sink, hook, line, and sinker. Take it all, because actually, maybe he knew that what Esau's after, the carnal goods.
Maybe.
He said, take it all, because me, all I want is to go back to the land of the inheritance of Abraham.
Okay, yeah.
And by the time he had done all that, Esau's heart sees his brother limping, and what does the text say? They talked. Jacob actually prostrated himself in front of him, called him my Lord, gave him all the honor and respect he wanted, gave him all the goods, and they ended up embracing each other and going their own way.
Wow.
So to me, that represents a little bit of a blueprint on how it's going to happen.
Okay, sure.
But here there is that angel that comes in before that.
Okay, yeah.
So, in my humble, modest opinion, I think this is going to happen when, like it says in prophecies, that Jesus will come back on the Mount of Olives, and they will look at him upon whom they have pierced, and they will cry for him as for an only son. And after that, then things will be restored.
Wow.
I see that story of Jacob as a blueprint of what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating.
Maybe soon.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
All right. I got another question for you. You just mentioned Esau is still fighting Jacob to this day. Like, What do you mean by that? Like generations later? Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you caught that. I exactly wanted you to ask me that question.
Yeah, pretty sharp.
So anyway, there is a, a concept in Jewish Bible teaching that the deeds of the fathers are important to the children.
Mm.
I teach Bible prophecy, but I believe that in order to understand the future, we got to look backward.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Do you think Esau knew what he was giving up when he sold you for a bowl of soup? And then the other part is, do you really think Jacob knew what he was doing? Like, was one of them fooled, or did he, help me understand this exchange for soup? Like,
Yeah. That's a fair question, and of course we're not told that. So when we're not told something, uh, we're left with speculation,
right.
and speculations are great. Uh, and me, when I speculate on questions like that, I like to take it to everyday life. So in everyday life, I think God tests us on important things through small things.
Mm.
Like Yeshua said that. He said, "He that is faithful in little shall be given much."
Mm-hmm.
I heard one time a pastor who was teaching about responsibility, and he gave the story about a company owner, much like your company, and they were looking for somebody to work in their company. And they had an interview, and the interview was done in a room like this one.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an interviewer, the boss actually. He was
Mm.
sitting at a desk right here,
Okay.
on the chair. And the interviewee would come from the front, and on the floor, there would be an empty floor, just a chair in front. On the floor, there would be a crumpled piece of paper. You know, Everyone came, the boss asked credentials and said, okay. Until one guy came and picked up the piece of paper on his way in. That's the one that was chosen,
Mm-hmm. He
for the job.
cared more
He
than
cared.
just getting the job.
Yeah, he took initiative without being asked for a little thing. The boss thought, this guy, I want this guy part of my company. So, and like Esau, I don't think he had an idea of what he was giving up, but he had some sort of idea. He knew that the firstborn, the birthright of the firstborn, he became the leader of the tribe, and there was a double inheritance from Father Abraham, who was rich, Father Isaac, also. So he knew that. So there was that. Now the spiritual things that would happen afterward, he probably didn't know, but because he didn't care, he was not. What it says in the Bible that Esau was a hunter and he was out there. Jacob was a man of the tents, in the tent. It was an expression to say he's a man in the tent. It's an expression that means he's a scholar, he's a student. He sat there studying the word and caring for people. He was a shepherd, he was a pastor, he was not out there having fun and doing things. He was
Sure.
concerned for the people and he studied the word. So Jacob probably knew a bit more what it meant. He had an inkling.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't think about humanity, but he thought
Yeah.
at least his family, his tribe. He had an inkling, and he knew that his brother really didn't care.
I think that goes to show that the younger siblings are sneaky.
Yeah,
They're a little
could be.
sneaky.
So I think this is a real thing about life too, that the little things that we're faithful in, we don't know what repercussions they have
Mm.
in the sight of
Sure.
God and in the sight of life, even.
Mm.
So I hope that kind of answers your question. Um, So let's go back to Abraham for a minute.
Okay.
Okay? Here, the covenant that Hashem made with Abraham in Genesis 12:3. It was the covenant of the process to return humanity to God after the fiasco of the Garden of Eden. I love that because here in the Garden of Eden, we're given everything and we blew it. But God could say, well, leave them to their own devices. What do I care? What do I need them for? But I don't think he didn't do that. He loves us. He wants us to be with him. So what did he do? He took the initiative to create some sort of way to bring us back to him.
Love that.
It's the covenant of redemption. The word redemption means to buy back humanity. And he didn't just want to buy them as slaves. He wanted their heart. He wanted our heart. And he's like, to bring it to life today, he's like the cheated husband who was cheated upon, and he's trying to repair the relationship with his wife by taking the charges, everything, blame, everything. It's like, whoa. So I like to see that. And of course, that covenant, and I'll repeat it again, included the creation of the state of Israel. And we've got to remember that. The covenant for the redemption of humanity involves the creation of the state of Israel, that was then called the land of Canaan. So in those words of Genesis 12, Abraham becomes a custodian of that covenant and his responsibilities to pass it on to his children. Now we can see why the enemy was against that. Right away, he made Sarah barren. It took a miracle for Abraham to have children. If Abraham doesn't have children, it's all done.
Wow.
So, and it had to come from Sarah. Paul explains that in the book of Galatians. So, but right away, Sarah is barren. Next, Rebecca is barren. Rebecca has 2 kids, and one wants to kill the other. Well, the one who wants to kill the other is not worthy of that covenant. And then you have all the mess of Jacob's marital life, which created the mess between the tribes of Israel, when it became 2 kingdoms at war with each other. You can see how the whole thing gets messed up. So indeed, what I would like to say is that the annihilation and disappearance of Israel from the world scene is actually part of the active plan of the devil.
Oh.
And whoever wishes for it or doesn't care about it sides against God's program and sides with the devil's program.
Wow.